This fill pit will be operated by Fox Hauling because the I-65 project did not provide enough clean fill material to bring the pit back up to its natural elevation. The original reclamation plan for this site was to return the property to a farm field. The new plan remains the same. It just extends the time to December 2030. The requirements of the zoning ordinance will be met. A 100-foot setback from all property lines has been shown, as well as the required farm field fence. Variances were approved and are still valid that eliminated the required buffering and changed the type of required fencing. Traffic generation will just be employees on site and trucks delivering fill to the site. Outdoor lighting will be the same as what is currently in use. Noise production will just be from trucks delivering fill to the site. No crushing of concrete or asphalt will occur on this property. And the hours of operation are the same as what was originally approved. So staff is recommending approval with 7 conditions. The conditions include county surveyor approval. All lighting must be directed away from motorists and away from the residences in Willowwood East subdivision. The reclamation plan must be recorded. Petitioner must obtain an improvement location permit. Petitioner will provide evidence of annual payment of the bond premium. And we need either a permit or waiver of permit by the County Highway Department for alterations to the site entrance. And that's all I've got. Steve?
Thank you, Kathy. Petitioner or his or her representative?
This is Scott Starr on behalf of the petitioner. Can you
Also,
hear
do
me?
you have any? Yes, I can hear you. Do you have any documents that you need to present as well, or are you just?
No, we do not. We included everything in the packet. I just wanted to say that the 7 conditions that were just read are acceptable, and we intend to comply with every condition.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the room that, or I guess it's a county office building room that wishes to speak on this?
I'll ask Steve. Is there anybody here in the audience that would like to speak to this petition? It appears not for this case.
Okay. We will also, if anybody has any comments that are on Facebook or YouTube, please go ahead and make those comments if you have not already. And we'll have 1 minute. And while we're waiting for that minute, I'll take any comments from the board. Or against.
Steve, there's currently no public comment on social media, but we are having problems. Facebook is still not working, and we have a complaint on the YouTube channel that the video is working, but not the audio. But presently on YouTube, there are no comments about this case, but I have to acknowledge that it appears that the audio is not coming through properly on the YouTube site. So that's our current status. I'll continue to monitor it and see if it's going to improve, but I've kind of done everything I can on my end. So.
Okay.
Steve, more than a minute's passed.
1 minute has passed. Since 1 minute has passed and we have no comments, we will go ahead and fill out and submit our ballot.
Steve? Steve?
Yes,
Yeah, I'm not getting my ballot. I don't see the ballots.
they were in an email that were sent yesterday.
Okay. Oh, that's
When-
right. I gotta go back to them. All
You gotta go
right.
back to, you gotta go back to your email that
That's right here.
it has the go-to meeting link in it.
Got it. Thank
Good.
you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Tom, can you give me answers, your reasoning on number 2 and number 3, please?
Just click edit my response.
Yeah, you should be able to edit it just and then type
All right.
in the change.
Edit your response. Number 2. Okay. Two and 3 will not. That work?
Looks good. Thank you, sir. Hey, Gary, on number 2, I think you just forgot to write will. You had your reasons in there, but
I will edit.
hey, Ed, could you look at number 4A, and I just need you to give me a reason on that one. Other than that, everything.
Okay. Did that fix it?
Yeah, it's not coming through yet on my end, but give it a second.
Looks like I might have to do it. I went back to it, but it's like it's asking for everything over again.
Are you sure you clicked on the same one there? You should be able to just edit that.
Everything I put in there
Easy.
is gone. How do I get back to the one? It's bringing up the old, just looks like I gotta do it.
Are you sure you're on the right one and not a?
Well, it's the right one, 1786.
Yep.
All right, so
And I think your screen might be different than me. Steve, where's that edit button?
The the edit button's on the window after you submit it. If you close the form, I don't think you can edit it.
yeah, see, and I've closed out after I sent it, so looks
Yeah,
like I gotta,
Okay.
don't close the document after you submit it
okay,
until after we're done with the case.
okay.
All right, we are good. Thank you, everybody. So I now do have to call a voice vote per the governor's executive order. So just to confirm, when I call your name, just say approve or deny. Steve Clevenger,
Approve.
Tom Andrew,
Approve.
Gary Schroeder,
Approve.
Frank Donaldson,
Approve.
Jen Decker,
Approve.
Ed Butts,
Approved.
and Carl Griffin is absent. BZA 1786 is approved, 6 votes to 0.
That extension has been, to the special exception has been approved. And we'll hear the next case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA 2038 Bill J. Phillips. Petitioner is requesting a variance to allow a setback of 15 feet instead of the required 25 feet from the southern Samola Drive to build a house on 0.82 acres zoned R1 located at the northwest corner of US 231 and Samola Drive, specifically 36 Samola Drive in the Sam Wilson subdivision. WL 29 Southwest 22-4 UZO 2-1-7.
A second.
A motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please.
Okay. Petitioner's property is located on the west side of US 231 South, between Samola Drive to the north and Samola Drive to the south in the Sam Wilson subdivision. The property is zoned R1, as is all surrounding property except to the east, which is zoned agricultural. Here's a look at the aerial photograph and a closer look at the property. Here's a look at the site plan. The Sam Wilson subdivision was created back in the 50s. It actually predates our subdivision control ordinance as well as our current subdivision ordinance. So a lot of the standards on that plat fall short of the standards that we have today. For example, the right-of-way for Samola Drive is only 30 feet wide, which by today's standards, that's pretty short, small. So here's petitioner's site plan. They're showing a 15-foot setback from the edge of the right-of-way to the edge of the house. There's also a detached three-car garage over here. The lots in the subdivision are on individual septic systems and wells. The site in question does meet the requirement for 30,000 square feet in the R1 zone. According to the county health department, they have had soil work done on a couple of lots to the front and have limited space for a septic system. The unusual shape of this lot and the fact that streets entirely surround it creates a long but narrow building envelope with 25-foot building setbacks from the north, west, and south, and a 60-foot setback from US 231. There's only 50 feet of buildable area. This might have been cause for hardship, except houses with a dimension of 50 feet or less are not uncommon. And in fact, it's more the norm for this subdivision. Petitioner's proposed house is significantly larger than houses in the neighborhood. I believe the staff report mentions that you could turn this proposed house 90 degrees and it would fit within the 50-foot envelope. That would be if you eliminated that rear roofed patio area and put a smaller front roofed porch on it. So In staff's opinion, while the situation is definitely unique, there does not appear to be an ordinance-imposed hardship. A smaller house, one in line with existing houses in the neighborhood, could be built without the need of a variance. Steve, I do have 2 letters to read, and I do have other slides to show.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did we want to hear from petitioner? We'll hear from petitioner first before we hear the letters, if that's
okay. You want me to do these slides real quick?
sure.
Okay. So this picture was taken looking due east. So US 231 is sort of in the background here. This is Samola Drive to the south and to the north. And then I turned around from this same point and took this slide. So this is facing due west. This slide was taken from US 231 looking due west. So this is the site in question right in front of us. And this slide was taken from the northern Samola Drive looking south across the site in question. And that's it. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Kathy. Petitioner or his or her representative?
This is Bill Phillips.
And do you have any documents that you are going to share on the go-to meeting?
Just the same documents that Kathy showed.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
The site plan, if you look at the house, there's a 15-foot setback request on the lower side on this document. Just on the house, the garage itself is 25 feet setback. Kathy forgot to mention that. The septic tank, we've already had engineering, and there's plenty of room for septic tank. The soil is perfect for a septic tank. But behind the house and between the garage, or over behind the garage. So there's the well in front of the house. There's plenty of room for both. We've got support both from the well drilling company and the Cheesens for the septic tank.
Okay. Anything else?
It's the same size house. It's a 2,500 square foot house. As 14 of the other residents in the same place. Kathy said it was a bigger house than all of them, and that's just not correct. Most of the homes are actually much larger. Several of them are 2 stories, much higher than ours, and everything else. But anyhow.
Okay. We'll probably have some questions for you in a minute.
Sure.
But would like to go ahead and ask for the letters.
Sure. This first one is from Otis and Shirley Morris of 10 Samola Drive. The setback of 25 feet plus ditch on Samola Drive is too small. I think the setback should be 50 feet plus ditch. The county isn't taking into consideration that most of the houses on Samola are more than 50 feet from the roadway. In addition to that, Vectren will need to put in additional lines to the folks in the back. About half the neighborhood doesn't have natural gas yet. Pittmont is planning to move all the power lines to the front of the houses when they give us high-speed internet in the near future. Their lines need a lot of space. Plus, TDS may need to bury their fiber optic cables to the back when the power lines are moved. I can tell you that someone tried to build on that lot about 20 years ago, and the county health department said there was not enough space on that lot for a septic system and a house. The current owner knows it, so why are they still trying to sell it as buildable? Sincerely, Otis Morris and Shirley Morris. Okay, the second letter comes with a drawing here. There. This is from Kenneth Driscoll, 60 Samola Drive. Dear Sirs, there is no reason to disregard the 10 feet of ditch on the south side of Samola Drive. Inside the current setback of 25 feet plus ditch, the proposed buildings and concrete would cover more than 30% of the lot. This variance is being requested to build an inappropriately large house on this lot, which is too small. None of the houses on Samola Drive are larger than 1,300 square feet. And none of the buildings have a setback less than 25 feet. Please don't ruin the charm of this older neighborhood with a McMansion. In addition, I was present when the builder of this neighborhood, Sam Wilson, guaranteed my father that this lot would never be built upon. It is the green space entrance to a neighborhood. I have included a copy of the map from the original abstract, showing that the lot is not numbered and not intended for building. Sincerely, Kenneth Driscoll.
Okay,
And this
thank you.
is what was attached.
Thank you, Kathy. Is there anyone in the county office building that wishes to speak, Sally?
Did any of you? Yes, I have one.
Okay.
Larry, you want her back at the microphone, don't you? Go ahead.
Thank you. I am Sherry Bogue. I live at 34 Samola Drive on the north of the U shape of Samola. I want to, well, I needed to come to tell you that there are circumstances around the south side of Samola that has not been presented and you need to know. Farm equipment comes up and down Samola Drive on a regular basis because the only way that the farmer can get to his back field is to go over the bridge behind Samola into Indian Bead. The farmer has his equipment that's about 20 feet wide. And after he gets over the bridge and up onto Samola, if he meets an oncoming car, he has to get off the road by 10 feet. It's very important that we not allow any blockage of his right-of-way to get through there, including utilities, and that there needs to be established about a 12-foot setback for anything so that the farmer can continue to do his business back there on the fields. Okay, so in addition to that, I have spoken to the Tippecanoe engineer a couple of times. Tippecanoe intends to take all the power lines out of the back of everyone's house and bring it all out to the front in the street. Okay, when they do this, and they get out there and they can load up the sensor there, not having any trees on it whatsoever, they're going to see that the south side where the variance requested is actually a straight shot to the back. They're going to want to put all of their stuff right there. So it would be wise to leave enough setback for both the farmer and for Tippecanoe's future use of that if they choose to put the power line there. So I'm proposing that we go with 12 feet ditch on the road on both sides, and then another 15, 20 feet, maybe even 25 feet for Tippecanoe. I'm not up on how much room Tippecanoe needs, but I am certain that 25 feet total is not enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Anyone else? I think that's it for the persons in the room.
Okay. Also, it if you are online, please go ahead and write comments on the YouTube or Facebook. And while we're doing that, we'll take questions from the board.
Does the proposal or the proposed house, if variances are granted, impose on any current drainage easements, et cetera? Or would Tipmont need to purchase that additional right-of-way easement to be able to accommodate what's being discussed?
It sounds to me like Tipmont would have to purchase some additional. There's only 30 feet wide right-of-way at that point. My guess is the road is maybe 20 feet wide. So, yeah.
Thank you.
This is Bill Phillips. I spoke to Tipmont on this very issue. There is 18 feet from the current pavement. If we could go back to the site plan.
Sure.
If you look at the north side, the gray half circle is all pavement. There's 18 feet of additional roadway to get to 30 feet. Currently, the natural gas line runs roughly about 1 foot from the edge, the north edge of that pavement all the way back. So there's no additional for anything with natural gas that would need to be dug back. It goes all the way back to the round curve, and then it goes back to the Driscoll lot, and then goes up his way. So there's no additional room there. All the underground fiber optic is generally put into less than a 4-foot area. So from what Tipmont said, there's no additional space. And they would use that right-of-way area of 15 feet to be able to do all that without imposing on anything to do with the ditch. If you look on the south side, if you look on the outside circle, that's the rest of the right-of-way. If any additional utility is to go in there, it would be done on that side, on the opposite side of the property that we're proposing. So that would be on the south side of that line of the gray paved area. So it would not be in the inside circle. And from what I understand, for the next 20 years, there will be no additional utilities going back there because everything runs to the about 10 feet on the face of 231 and goes underground and goes straight back. So they do not plan on using that half circle for any additional utilities to go back.
This is Stephen. I do have a question. What about an answer to the response of turning the house 90 degrees, or making the house longer rather than as you seem to have the long end on the narrow portion of the lot?
It's actually 5 feet wider, unless we don't put a front porch on and a back porch on.
Because if you had because I'm assuming that you'd have a porch, but you could turn it 90 degrees and still have the porch like facing the garage. It would be a redesign of the inside of the house.
We couldn't have a back porch on it at all if we went that way. We spend most of our time entertaining, barbecuing, and everything else in the backyard.
Out there, other houses up in the area, we've heard there's some 2-story ranches exceeding 1,300 square feet, and we've heard only 1,300 square foot houses. What is it? I haven't been out there.
There's approximately 3 houses on the right side of Samolia that are probably, the first 2 are probably right around 1,300 feet. Then you go out on a curve, and they're actually much bigger. They're 2-story. If you go on the south side, it's a 2-story home. It's much bigger than 1,300 square feet. So the 4 homes that are adjacent to the property, 2 of them are smaller than, are about 1,500 square feet. 2 of them are larger. The rest of them behind the circle are all larger than 1,500. They're right around 22 to 2,900 square feet.
But speaking in terms of first floor square footage, 1,300 would be more accurate, correct?
Highly doubtful.
Yes.
Probably more likely about 15 to 18.
Okay. Could you speak perhaps to the necessity to construct a 2,500 square, this specific 2,500 square foot residence? It looks like, 220 less square feet, or, taking 5 feet off to meet the minimum setback down your 44 square foot, or I'm sorry, your 44 foot depth of a house, would allow you to build the same plan per se, and lose some minimal square footage per room. Is there something specifically necessary to build this plan?
It's a 3-bedroom, pretty basic house. It's just all on 1 floor. I mean, I submitted a floor plan, but I don't know that Kathy has it in this. So you can actually see it. There's nothing grandiose about it.
Sure. There's 10,000 ways to do a split floor plan ranch of 3 bedrooms. My question was just if there was something specific to this floor plan that required the 2,500 square feet set up exactly like this to encroach on the setbacks, or if it was just a preference on you liked this floor plan, or if there was something specific to the floor plan.
It's just got all hallways. So if anybody should get hurt or need a wheelchair, things of that nature, all the hallways, the doorways, or everything, they're 4 foot wide, so that someone who's handicapped could occupy the house without any issues.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any drainage easements along the road? And I guess it's a question probably for staff.
There are 2 drain ditches in the very back that they're there. They've been inspected. One drains on the south backside, drains back to the creek that was put in by the county. And then one on the opposite side drains from the north side of Somalia into the back of Somalia and then drains back out.
I guess I'm specifically asking, and it's probably staff may be able to answer this. Is there any drainage easement along the road on this lot?
No, there was nothing platted.
And it doesn't look like there's much of a drainage ditch. Does this require drainage board approval at all?
I don't, that's a good question. Sally, do you know?
It's got drainage. I mean, we've been out there after it's rained really hard, and there's never any standing water. Everything runs off to the sides and then straight
Well,
back.
we're asking whether or not it requires any approvals for drainage, not how it drains.
Sure.
I suspect not, as there's nothing on the plat, and I don't think they're going to be disturbing enough land to require compliance with Rule 5 and some of the other drainage requirements. That's my guess.
Did we have any comments from Facebook or YouTube?
Again, Facebook is still not working. We have no comments on YouTube.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? And Bill, I don't know if I know you answered some questions. I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to rebut against on any of the speakers or the letters.
The only thing I wanted to say is each side of the road is 20 feet wide. with an additional on both sides. There's plenty of room on the road for nothing to impede traffic or anything of that nature. On the south side, there's actually even a lot more room on the south side of it. If you go back and look at that diagram, it's just not being used. So it's there to be used for a road. It's actually in the diagram and you can see it. So if anybody's concerned about a further road, I would suggest we use the road for what the road was meant for, instead of trying to prevent more ease back space.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, we've got a ballot.
Just a gentle reminder, don't close those out in case there's anything we got to tweak.
Yep. Thanks, Zach.
Hey, Gary, I know you've got your finding on there, but if you could you still give me some reasons on this one for each of those?
Will do.
Thank you, sir. Hey, Tom, look at question number 1. Based on your response, I don't think that's what you meant to click on that one.
Which number?
Number 1.
Did that work, Zach?
Yep, that came through. Give me just a second to check all the votes. Okay, unfortunately, it appears we will have an inconclusive vote, but I still need to call out the voice vote. So when I call your name, please signify your vote with approve or deny. Steve Clevenger,
Deny.
Gary Schroeder,
Deny.
Tom Andrew,
Approve.
Frank Donaldson, Frank, you still there? Frank, is your vote is approved, correct?
Approved.
All right. Jen Decker,
Deny.
Ed Butts.
Approved.
Frank, approved.
Got it, Frank. So, Steve, we have a vote of 3-3, which is inconclusive at this point.
So this case will be automatically continued to our next meeting, which is in
Correct.
August.
Is my approved, Frank?
Yep, we got you, Frank. I don't know if you heard that this case will automatically be continued to the August meeting to be reheard at that time. And that date, I believe, is August 26th. And we'll have to find out if it's virtual or not when we find it in August, when we find out what's going on.
That's correct, Steve. We don't know at this point whether it'll be virtual or in person.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Phillips, make sure you have that calendared and please reach out to APC staff to confirm if that meeting is going to be held virtually or in person as we get closer to that date.
Okay, would we need to file anything, do anything, or do we just kind of wait and see?
I don't believe there's anything for you to file. It's just a matter that we'll rehear the case at the next meeting, And
okay.
Zach can confirm that.
Very good.
Yes, that's correct. And if you have any questions, staff can address those offline.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and hear the next case, please.
And if that's a Purdy case, I need to recuse myself from those cases for Gary.
All three of them? Okay. And I do have a question. I know the first one is a different property, but did we want to hear the last two together and vote on those separately?
Correct. BZA 1920 will be heard first, and then the other two cases will be heard together, both separately.
Okay, thank you. And Jen, did you want to read the motion since Gary has recused himself? And then Tom, if you'd second.
I do, yes. I move to hear and vote on BZA 1920 Purdy O'Neill Farm LLC. Petitioner is requesting an extension of a previously approved special exception for a mining operation, BZA 1920, approved in October of 2014, which was itself an extension of a previously approved special exception, BZA 1591, approved in October of 2001, to extend both mining and reclamation to December 2040. The hours of operation approved in 2001 were daylight hours only, except for the occasional INDOT or governmental project where aggregate or concrete are needed during nighttime hours. The two tracts included in this request are 180 acres, known as the O'Neill Farm, located near the intersection of County Road 150 East and County Road 510 South, and 120 acres, commonly known as 5105 East 500 South in Weah Township, Section 21, 22-4, UZO 3-2 with condition.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And we'll hear from staff, please. Ryan?
Okay, thank you. As you can see, the 302-acre site in this request is mostly all zoned agriculture with floodplain zoning in the kind of the northeast section. And then there's a small patch of I-3 kind of in the middle there on the north side that was established for the purpose of the batch plant that was under Z2295. So it's all connected. Apart from the aforementioned batch plant, scale house and a few buildings serving as an office are located on the site. So you can see from the aerial, you can go ahead and zoom into the next one. Whoa, there we go. So you can kind of see the extent of the operations as they currently stand. As you can see in the photo, there's some houses nearby that join this property. One house is located on the south side of the road and is adjacent to the request, and then bordering the southern property line is more land and agricultural production. The site does have frontage on County Road 150 East, where it intersects County Road 510 South. Access to the operation is not to be changed with this petition renewal, essentially. A long-standing commitment attached to the special exception will continue to be in force relative to vehicles entering and leaving per day. That would be 250 vehicles allowed to come into the site and 250 allowed to exit per day. Let's see here. If the extension's approved, the petitioner's new mining operation will transport aggregate via conveyor belt to the subject site for processing, loading onto trucks. The extension would essentially allow mining and reclamation to be extended to 2040 as opposed to the current 2036. And it is staff's opinion that the development standards for the requested use prescribed by the UZO will be met by virtue of the variances approved in BZA 1919 back in 2014. Because there have been multiple approved mining operations in this area for at least 25 years, granting this special exception will not subvert the general purposes of the ordinance. Granting the special exception will not materially or permanently injure other property or uses in the same district and vicinity because of traffic generation. That is unchanged per the commitment and previous approvals. Placement of outdoor lighting work will be completed during daylight hours primarily, and any lighting on the site will be directed away from the neighboring properties. In terms of noise production, no additional noise will be produced than what is already occurring on the site, given the existing approvals. Hours of operation are dusk to dawn, and again, with nighttime hours only to satisfy aggregate needs during any nighttime road projects. And then, of course, I already mentioned the lighting issues. So it's our opinion all the tests are met at this point, so staff is recommending approval with one condition, that evidence that the letter of credit in the amount of $285,000 remains in effect, or a new surety in the form of a bond or letter of credit is supplied to staff to replace a potentially expired bond. So as long as that bonding's in place, staff is recommending approval with conditions.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Yes.
And Dan, let me know if you have anything to share as well on the GoToMeeting.
For the record, Dan Teeter, attorney with Riley, Teeter and Schreier, represent the petitioner. Present tonight are Joanne Purdy, the petitioner's representative, Opal Cool, who's one of the engineers on the project, and Tim Balanceifer with T-Bird Design and Engineering. As you're aware, we're asking for an extension for a previously approved special exception for mining. This 300-acre tract, which I'm going to call the current pit, started with 180 acres in 2001, and in 2014 we added the additional 120 to get to the 300 that we have today. With that expansion, the end date was extended to 2036. At this time, we're requesting that this date to end mining and complete the reclamation be extended to December of 2040. Our goal is to end the mining and reclamation for the current site, and what you'll see in a few minutes for the new site to end at the same time. Since the material for the new site will be transported by conveyor to this current site, the time frame for both pits, in our opinion, should be the same. That's the only change to the current pit. As staff's indicated, the lighting, the noise production, the traffic, hours of operation, everything else will remain the same. Nothing else will change. We have met all the standards of the ordinance. We concur with staff's report, staff's recommendation. We will abide by the condition, and we are asking for approval. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Dan. Anyone wishing to speak from the county office building?
Do we have speakers in the audience? It doesn't look like it, Steve.
Okay, thank you. And if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube, if you would like to go ahead and make your comments, we'll wait a minute for it. And while we're doing that, we'll go ahead and take questions from the board. Yes, Dan, I do have one question. So really the only reason you're doing this is, I guess, twofold. One, because you're moving material across this site from the new site, and two, so that I'm assuming that the end dates for the reclamation plans, or the mining and reclamation, will end both in 2040.
That's correct. Yeah, we're just trying to make them simultaneous. It seems to make a whole lot of sense to do that. I think staff, obviously staff agrees with that.
Steve, we have a comment coming in on YouTube, but I'm not sure it's all finished and ready to
Okay.
read yet.
He's submitting them in little snippets here.
They may only let you put so much in at a time.
Right. Mr. Queen, my name is Ryan O'Gara. I'm monitoring your comments. When you're done, please indicate in your comments that you've finished. I'll go ahead and read what you've written into the record.
Sally, you may have to mute while Ryan's talking. We're getting a lot of feedback if you guys are in the same room.
I'm sorry, Zach, what did you say?
We were getting a lot of feedback. If you're in the same room as Ryan, you may want to mute yours.
Yes, I agree.
Let's say. Until he's finished.
I think we have a gentleman in the audience who might like to speak. Is that correct, sir? Yeah. Could you go back to the microphone, please?
Okay, basically.
Could you give your name and address for the record, please, first?
My name is Rodney Klein, 6621 South 200 East.
Thank you.
And I basically want to know how far are they moving the pit back? How far away from 200 East will it be?
I don't know, Dan, if you can answer that question, or staff.
Nothing's changing. Everything there is staying the same, just as it was approved previously. The only thing we're asking for is an extension of 4 years to coordinate with the new pit that we're going to talk about shortly, south of this existing pit.
There are two more cases which I think are the subject of what your question relates to.
Okay. Will those be talked about today, or is that future? Okay.
Thanks, Sally.
Okay, the comment on YouTube is ready to be read.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Okay. This is from Mr. Ed Queen. He says, hello, and thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment as a citizen on the requests that have been outlined. My name is Ed Queen, and I'm a resident of Masons Ridge subdivision, which is due north of the mining operation run by Purdy O'Neill Farm, LLC. I respectfully oppose the requests for variance and special exception on tonight's agenda, and he's referencing all three cases concerning Purdy. Petitioner's current operation is a large source of noise pollution for surrounding residents and other zones. For starters, I take issue with the descriptions of when operations are allowed in the associated documentation, such as, quote, daylight hours only, except for occasional INDOT or governmental project, where aggregate or concrete are needed during nighttime hours, BZA 1920. And, quote, the hours of operation will be dusk to dawn to dusk, 7 days a week, BZA 2039 and 2040. Oops. Got my spot, there we go. The wording is subject to interpretation and favors the petitioner. The petitioner can essentially do operations 24/7 and claim they're performing necessary operations for INDOT / other government entities. Because of this, in the 6 years that I've lived in Masons Ridge, I've observed these restrictions are frequently violated, particularly in the late fall, winter, and early spring months when there are fewer daylight hours during which to operate. If these requests are approved, I request that consideration be given to adjusting the language to remove altogether the condition allowing the petitioner to operate during dark hours, and to further specify daylight hours, quote unquote, and quote unquote dusk until dawn as 30 minutes after officially recorded sunrise to 30 minutes before officially recorded sunset. I disagree with the staff opinion that noise production sources of noise will be from equipment that is not dissimilar to farm equipment used in the area. Berms, setbacks, and wooded areas will aid in noise reduction. All processing of aggregate will be done off-site on petitioner's operation adjacent to the north, BZA 2039, staff comment 5C. Farm equipment does not make as much noise as the incessant sounds created by the conveyor belts. On farms, there are not constant sounds of dump trucks beeping as they back up or slamming their tailgates. On farms, I've never known of controlled blasts that are so concussive that they shake nearby residents' windows. All of these sounds and more are heard daily in Masons Ridge, which is separated by the wooded area along Weah Creek. The petitioner's request should only be approved on the conditions that they can and will mitigate or eliminate noise produced affecting surrounding areas. Furthermore, I do not think the petitioner should be granted any exceptions that allow any further negative impact on the surrounding natural environment. While the petitioner may be doing the bare minimum as required by law to reclaim the land, any aerial observer of the property can clearly see that the land will be uninhabitable by humans or other wild animals who rely on the area for natural resources for decades to follow. In summary, I acknowledge that the product of mining operations is valuable to society and that I myself benefit from their products. However, I do not think that the petitioner should be allowed to cut corners, so to speak, just because existing codes and laws are inconvenient. Thank you again for your time and consideration of my comments this evening. This is all.
Thank you.
His name was Ed Queen.
Okay,
That's
thank
the
you.
only
Ed.
comment, Steve.
All right. We appreciate your comments. Are there any other comments? And would you like to rebut?
Just a few words, if I could. I think most of the comments he's making are really addressing the next two petitions and not this one. The things he brings up with regard to this, the current pit, is things that we've discussed and went through in 2001 and again in 2014. And I don't think those issues are pertinent or, I don't think there's, again, we're making no change. So I don't see where those are really a pertinent point at this time. Additionally, I would want to say that we did talk to the adjoining neighbors to the east, the two large tracts there, and both of them are much closer than this person is in Masons Ridge. They had no objections to what we're doing. They indicated that they thought we've been doing a good job, and again, that had no objections to what we're doing. So with that regard, again, I would ask the board to approve this matter, and we'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Does the board have any further questions? If not, we've got a ballot.
All right, so when I call your name, signify your vote with approve or deny. Steve Clevenger,
Approve.
Gary Schroeder has recused himself. Carl Griffin's absent. Ed Butts,
Approved.
Tom Andrew,
Approved.
Frank Donaldson.
You unmute, Frank?
Approved.
Jen Decker,
Approved.
5 votes in favor of approving BZA 1920.
Thank you.
Thank you. That has been approved. And I would like
Yes.
to,
Is that coming through?
yes, it came through, Frank.
Frank,
I just would like to
Frank,
comment if there are any concerns about, the hours of operation, or, violating these, to please bring those up with the zoning enforcement in the building commissioner's office, for those that were questioning that. And at this point, we'll go ahead and hear the last 2 cases. We'll hear them together and vote on them separately. So if you'd like to go ahead and read both of them into the record.
I move to hear together and vote on separately BZA 2039 Purdy O'Neill Farm LLC. BZA 2039 Purdy petitioner is requesting a special exception for mining and quarrying of non-metallic minerals except fuel SIC 14. The hours of operation would be dusk to dawn, 7 days per week. Both mining and reclamation would be completed by December 2040. The 3 tracts included in this request are all located south of County Road 510 South and east of South 9th Street and include 3.76 acres in Tract B, 76.3 acres in Tract C, and 60.1 acres in Tract D, for a total of 140.16 acres, zoned agricultural and floodplain, located in WIA 28, E1.5, 22-4, UZO 3-2, with conditions. And BZA 2040 Purdy O'Neill, petitioner is requesting the following 4 variances from the Unified Zoning Ordinance required standards for mining and quarrying of non-metallic minerals. Variances 1 and 2 have been withdrawn by the petitioner as of July 15th, 2020. Variance number 3, to allow no buffer yard, no fence, and no setback on the Tract C site along its north property line, UZO 497 C and D. Number 4, to allow no buffer yard and no fence on Tract C along its eastern property line next to the property owned by Lauren Schroeder, UZO 497 C and D. Number 5, to allow no buffer yard and no fence on Tract Z for a different portion of its eastern property line next to property owned by William Brunton, UZO 497 C and D. And number 6, to allow no buffer yard and no fence on Tract D along its northern property line, UZO 497 C and D, on properties located south of County Road 510 South and east of South 9th Street, and including a total of 140.16 acres, zoned agricultural and floodplain in WIA 28, E1.5, E1/2, 22-4.
Second.
Thank you. And we'll hear from staff, please.
Okay. Before I begin my presentation, Steve, I just want to let you know we do have 1 letter in opposition on the variance case for request number 4. So when you're ready to hear that, let me know.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and do my presentation. So the special exception, BZA 2039, is to allow mining, quarrying of non-metallic materials for a 140-acre site that is adjacent to the site we just heard in BZA 1920. This operation, its hours are dawn to dusk, 7 days a week. In the area zoning patterns under the special exception staff report, there is a reference to petitioner having to certify land that is zone floodplain, have it being certified out of that floodplain through our floodplain certification process, and that this petition can't move forward unless that's done. That has been accomplished by the petitioner, and that certification has been approved by APC's offices. So I just wanted to update that note there in case there were any questions. As you can see, we have agricultural zone land, and the map, I believe, represents the accurate certification. So now we have everything in the ag zone. In terms of access to the site, there will be no vehicular access in or out of the site. The material, the aggregate, is going to be transported to the adjacent property, the BZA 1920 site, by way of conveyor belt. And that site has the vehicular access with the commitment to 250 vehicles entering, 250 vehicles exiting. So we're not, there's no vehicle issues connected with this petition to BZA 2039. As was mentioned, obviously buffer yard setbacks, fencing, reclamation plan, all of these things are required for this mining operation, and we do have variances that I'll discuss shortly that are addressing some of those issues. The submitted reclamation plan, which we may have a slide for you there, it shows a resulting pond approximately 30 feet deep with slopes that cannot exceed a 3-to-1 ratio. And so there's the reclamation plan there showing the pond. As was mentioned earlier, this site is contained with the existing operation, subject to a December 2040 period, which they have to do the reclamation. The aggregate from the subject site, again, will be transported by conveyor belt to the existing site for processing and loading and leaving the site. Any overburden or excavated material that does not suit the operator's needs may be moved aside or left in place, but it must be leveled, graded, and landscaped to blend into the surrounding area. And at its July 1st meeting, the Executive Committee of the Area Plan Commission voted that granting this request would not substantially adversely affect the comprehensive plan. And its staff's opinions that the requirements and development standards for the request will be met. Particularly now that the floodplain certification has been completed. So that issue is off the table in terms of staff's condition there. So there's no condition, it meets the requirements. Point 3, there have been multiple mining operations approved in this vicinity for the past 25 years, as was previously mentioned. So granting this special exception will not subvert the general purposes of the ordinance, will not permanently or materially injure other property or uses in the same district or vicinity. Because of traffic generation, as I mentioned, there's no additional truck traffic coming into this location. It's all being handled in the adjacent property. Placement of outdoor lighting is going to be of a similar scope to what was next door. Lights are always directed away from the areas outside the property limits. The hours are dusk to dawn. The lighting is obviously there to capture that time where it's right in the early morning hours or early evening, and they need just a little bit of extra light before the sun goes down. Sources of noise will be similar to what has already been experienced in the immediate vicinity. Berm setbacks and wooded areas will aid in the noise reduction, excuse me. And all processing of the aggregate, as we mentioned before, is done off-site adjacent to the north. Hours have already been mentioned, so staff is recommending approval with 4 conditions. The first, that the county surveyor requirements, including IDEM approval, and which may include the drainage board approval, be met if applicable and required. The reclamation plan per the UZO must be recorded, and petitioner must provide surety in favor of Tippecanoe County in the amount equal to $3,000 per acre of land within the approved setbacks before seeking ILP, improvement location permit, and an approved permit from IDNR allowing the removal of a small small wetland that is located on the site, kind of on the southern end of the site there. You can kind of see it on the reclamation plan there, slide that is currently on your screen. So that concludes my presentation on the special exception. Let's move to variances. So the 4 variances that we have to allow no buffer yard, fence, and no setback on the tract C site along its northern property boundary, and to allow no buffer yard and no fence on the tract C along its eastern property boundary, and to allow no buffer yard and no fence along tract C along its different portion of its eastern property line, and also to allow no buffer yard, no fence on tract D along its northern property line. Let's see, it's all right. So it's staff's, and again, the Area Planning Commission, its July 15th meeting determined that the variances requested are not use variances. And so it is staff's opinion that granting variances 3, 4, 5, and 6 will not be injurious to the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community, because these areas abut either an existing mining operation or agricultural fields. Use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in variances number 3, 4, 5, and 6 will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. As stated above, no nearby uses would be negatively affected by not having a buffer, setback, or fence because of adjacent mining or ag fields. According to the petitioner, those adjacent properties owned have no expressed concern about having no buffer yard or fence. Regarding number 3, the terms of the zoning ordinance are being applied to a situation that is not common to other properties in the same zoning district, because this area abuts an existing mine that was granted variances for no buffer yard or fencing. Having a setback next to an active mine really serves no purpose in staff's opinion. And regarding 4, 5, and 6, the terms of the zoning ordinance are being applied to a situation that is common to other properties in the A zone. Although adjacent property owners may not be concerned, there's nothing particularly unusual about this site located near a creek where many mining operations can be found in terms of its size or relatively flat topography that would compel staff to support variances from these sorts of adjacent situations. So regarding variance number 3, strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in an unusual and unnecessary hardship as defined in the zoning ordinance. Because the zoning ordinance does not recognize a situation where you have 2 mining operations sharing a lot line. So staff can support elimination of that buffer yard and fence requirement in that situation. However, regarding 4, 5, and 6, strict application of the zoning ordinance will not result in an unusual or necessary hardship in staff's opinion. In variance number 3, it is staff's opinion, it is not self-imposed or based solely on a reduction or restriction on economic gain, because this area butts another mining site, and so no hardship is involved. It's not a self-imposed situation there. It is staff's opinion, there is no hardship involved in variances 4, 5, and 6, because each variance is solely based on the perceived reduction of or restriction on economic gain. The cost of fencing, buffering, and reduced mining areas due to the buffering requirements are only financial in staff's estimation. So variance number 3 does provide the minimum relief needed to alleviate the hardship, in our opinion. However, 4, 5, and 6 do not provide only the minimum relief because there's no hardship in staff's opinion. So staff is recommending approval of variance number 3 and denial of variance 4, 5, and 6. And we are also recommending approval of the special exception under BZA 2039 with those 4 conditions. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Yes, again, for the record, Dan Teeter, attorney for Riley, Teeter and Schreier. The same representatives that I mentioned before are still present, and they'd be happy to respond to any comments or questions as well. Our special exception petition is for the mining of this 140-acre tract. It's adjacent, but it is south, solely south of our current pit. We're going to have only 1 excavator and 1 loader on this site. That's the only equipment that you'll see at the site. There will be 2 to 5 employees. We believe most of the time you'll see 2 employees. Very rarely will we have more than that. The employees and the equipment will get to and from the site from the current pit. They will not use any of the exterior roadways in the area at all. It all goes internally. The purpose will be to dig up the aggregate and then place it on a conveyor, which is going to run to the current pit. That conveyor is about 5 feet high and about 3 feet wide. There's going to be no processing, no loading, no sales are going to occur on this new pit. So everything is going to go to the current pit, and the current pit's standards and requirements will not change. We're going to have the same hours as the current pit. There may be an occasion where we'll have lighting. That's fairly rare. That didn't occur very often on the current pit, and I don't think it will occur very often here on this pit as well. The noise is going to be minimal because, again, the processing is not going to occur here. It's going to occur at the other site, just like it presently is doing. No change. I don't know if anybody realizes, but there's never been any blasting. That's not what a gravel pit does. That's totally different than what our standard is. Additionally, there's going to be no water use at this new pit because, again, there's no processing. All that will be done at the current pit. The mining and reclamation is going to end in 2040, so we have the same time frame with the current pit as we do with this pit. On this particular petition, we meet all the standards of the ordinance. We concur with staff's recommendation, and we're going to ask for your approval of that petition. Now I want to go forward then and talk about the 4 variances that we have for this new special exception. I'm going to refer to them as variance 3, 4, 5, and 6 as we have on our petition, and also as you've seen before. Variance 3 is for no buffer yard, no fence, and no setback along the northern border. This area abuts our existing mining operation of the current pit to the north. Requiring a buffer yard, a fence, or setback really serves no purpose since both sides are in the mining operation. And staff agrees with this, and we support and concur with staff's recommendation. As to items or variances 4, 5, and 6, this is where we're asking for no buffer yard and no fence. We're going to have, and keep in mind, there always will be this 100-foot setback at all times from those adjoining properties to the east. That's the Schroeder property, and that's the Brunton property. Additionally, we have pictures, and hopefully you've seen those. I think Kathy may have put those up for you. That shows there's an existing farm fence, be that as it may, and there's also tree-lined borders on both properties. As far as variance 4 with the Schroeder tract, Lauren has written a letter, which you'll get to in a minute, but because Gary is on the board, we did not talk to Gary. We felt it was inappropriate to talk to any of the family members, even though we've known them all for a very long time. So we can address that a little later if you'd like. It's my understanding, though, now this is the Brunton property that you see there, the farm field, but it's my understanding that the acreage, again, for the Schroeder property is a wetland bank. And as a result, it cannot be developed. This site is also covered with trees and shrubs and grasses. And I would submit to you that a buffer yard or a fence for that area serves no purpose. Now, if you could show perhaps the other picture, which shows the Schroeder property. If you can't get it there, then you could look at the reclamation plan. There's the Schroeder property, but the reclamation plan then also shows how that area is all in trees and shrubs and grasses and is not being farmed and can't be farmed. Then I want to go to variants 5 and 6. And the farm tenant, which we've talked to for the Bruntons, expressed that the Bruntons have no desire for a fence or a buffer yard. It's his opinion that the existing tree line and farm fence is sufficient. This acreage has been farmed for many, many years in the past and will continue to do so for the future. It's my opinion that we meet all the standards of the ordinance. We will not be injurious to the health, safety, or welfare of the community, and the use and value of the adjacent property will not be negatively affected because the area is either abut a wetland, farmland, or mining. And as a result, this situation, in my opinion, is not common to other areas because we can only mine where there is aggregate. Without aggregate, we can't mine. And we already have sufficient buffer yard and fencing, in my opinion. A new fence and new buffer yard is going to serve no additional purpose to the wetland and also to the farm area. So with that, we would respectfully request your approval. I'd be happy to respond to any comments or questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. And you said we did have a letter.
Yes, one letter in opposition.
Let's go ahead and hear the letter.
Okay. This letter was submitted in opposition to BZA 2040 request number 4, the variance case. The author is Lauren W. Schroeder. Address is 4773 East 50 North, Lafayette, Indiana. Dear BZA members, our family is the owner of property C, and we are opposed to the variance requested for no buffer yard and no fence for the eastern portion bordering our property. Even though our land is just farm ground at this time, we also generate noise and dust, but only do so a few times a year. The proposed gravel pit will generate noise and dust 7 days a week, dawn to dusk. Thank you for your consideration. That's the letter.
Okay, thank you. And if there's anyone out there that's on Facebook or YouTube that would like to comment, please go ahead and do so, and we'll have a minute for that. I would also like to ask Sally if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead to the microphone.
Just a couple of thoughts that I had reading through the paperwork and listening to that.
Can you have name and address for the record, please?
My name's Lena Harper. My address is 2024 East 700 South.
Thank you.
This area, though it does abut the existing gravel pit, this area in particular further south is primarily residential. There's a lot of houses. There's houses right across the street there. And with the exception of the property that's owned by Purdy's, most of the property that is not residential is in very small parcels, primarily like 40 acres or less. So I just don't feel like this is an appropriate location for something like this. That again, as the letter said, I think that the noise level is going to be significantly higher than what I think they are thinking we will think it is going to be. And certainly to have it operating dawn to dusk 7 days a week in a place where a lot of people live is absolutely ludicrous, in my opinion. So
okay.
I vote deny. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there others who would like to speak? Not at this moment in the room, Steve.
Okay, thank you. And I'm assuming our minute has elapsed. If there's any comments on Facebook or YouTube.
You're on mute.
You can hear me, right? You're talking to Ryan. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Steve. Ryan, you're on mute, though.
I'm sorry. There we go. You can hear me.
Yep.
Sorry about that. We have one comment on YouTube from Mr. Ed Queen. It reads, "The conveyor belt and trucks produce a lot of noise." That's all I have so far.
Okay. Any comments from the board or questions? I guess I do have a question. I'm not sure if Kathy can point this out, where the location of each of the variances are. I know where 3 is, but I'm not exactly sure where I've got an idea of where the others are, but I'm not sure the exact extent.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. Ryan, you tell me if I'm wrong. I believe this is, would that be number 3?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. And then 4 is here.
Yes.
And then 5 would be this way.
Yes.
And then 6 would be here.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks, Dan.
I do have a question on is there any variance for the other side where you've got that triangle piece out?
No.
No, okay, so it's just it's just on the eastern side. It's on the north, but on the eastern side of that block.
Correct.
Everything on the western side.
Steve, there are, that's the same property owner. And
Okay.
buffer yards between property owner or between the same property owner are not necessarily required.
Gotcha.
Steve, if I could make a few comments when
Sure,
you're ready.
and you do have a chance to rebut as well.
Does the board have any other comments? And then I'll make a few comments as well. I'll go ahead. I think Kathy is helping everybody here to understand where the variances are. So she pointed out 3 and 4. So that's on both sides of the mining. And they're, you're going to be mining over that whole area. So there's no need for buffer yard fencing or setback on that. But then if you go down the first one, which is number 4, and you'll see it's that whole area in there is a darker area. So that's the Schroeder wetland bank. And that, in my understanding, cannot be disturbed. People that had developed somewhere else could buy part of this so that they could utilize their wetlands for building purposes. And that's what this is for. So that will never change. It's really one big buffer yard at this point, and will continue to be that way in the future. Then just south of that, before we get to the next variance, that is a piece of farm ground that the Purdy's also own. So then if you go further down, then for variance 5, that's with the Bruntons. That's the variance on the Bruntons east side. And then down there at the bottom is the Bruntons on our north side. So, and I also want to point out then at the very bottom of that little blue line that I have, at least on my screen, is a house, and that's where Joanne Purdy lives. So petitioner lives right there where we're planning on pursuing our special exception. I want to point out first on the noise that there's a substantial difference or distance between where we're going to work and where these houses are. I think very substantial. It's hundreds of feet. And there's, like we said, we got Schroeder already that buffers it. We've got the Purdy Farm that buffers it. And we got Brunton's that buffer it. And then when you go down here to the bottom, there's a large, I don't know, I want to say maybe 100-foot wide tree line there in front of Joanne Purdy's house that goes north and south. So we have a lot of buffering in there as well. So I want to say to remove the existing fence and tree line, to me, and then to install a new fence, especially like on the Schroeders, defeats the purpose of the buffering. I mean, we're just buffering. It doesn't make any sense to me. Additionally, there's no water available here. We're not using water for this process because that's going up through the conveyor to the current pit. So the likelihood that the new buffer yard would thrive is poor at best, in my opinion. You know, again, in Lauren Schroeder's letter that he wrote, he says it's farm ground. I don't know if he's talking about this property or maybe he's confused with another property, because what he has here is not farm ground. It's this wetland bank. There's no farming on that particular site. Well, it may have been years and years ago, but there hasn't been in the reasonable near past, and there won't be in the future. That can't not occur. If the Schroeders, you know, if Gary wasn't on the board, I would have talked to Gary to find out specifically what the family issue was on that. But at this point, I don't understand what that issue could be, because it's a big buffer yard. And with the Bruntons, again, they're right there. They're satisfied with what we have. They have no need for that. To me, I see no reason to have this buffer yard again, because it's going to be hard to maintain it. And also, if you look up on the current pit where we have those two large properties, there was variances granted for both of those for a buffer yard. So there's no buffer yard anywhere around this site, no buffer yard around the old site, and no buffer yard around the prior two sites that we've done in this area. So a buffer yard to me seems very, very unrealistic. And so with that, I think I've perhaps answered some of the concerns people have. I'd be happy to respond to any other comments or questions. I don't know if Joanne or Tim or anybody else has any, Opal has any other concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions. I guess one is between the Schroeder and Brunton properties. Purdy does own that field right there.
That's correct.
So there is no buffer yard or fence required between those properties. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's a tree line area and a fence, farm fence in there.
And is the farm fence, does that go all the way, you know, down through, I mean, across this side, that property line? Or is it broken, or?
The tree, that fence line, and again, you know, they can correct me on this, but I thought it went all the way down along that line. At least it does on the Schroeder property I know of, and it does on the Brunton property. I guess I would have to say I don't know whether it's on any of the other Purdy properties. But if you go down to the bottom there, obviously we're going to remove that because that's, you know, part of our request.
Correct. And I'm assuming that that fence, the existing farm fence, would not be coming out. That it would.
No, it stays along with the trees in there because it has some buffering to it, and I think the Bruntons are pleased with that.
Yeah. So essentially, for those, or especially the Schroeder property, you would be taking out existing trees and fence in order to put in a new fence and tree buffers.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to be facetious here, but I mean, they have a large area that's really, I won't call it a buffer yard, but it's a buffering area. And to buffer the buffer doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't see where that accomplishes anything. Because there's never going to be any houses there. There can't be. It will always be what it is today, with the nature taking over and having those things that are in there grow and add to it. So it's going to be a great buffering for the entire area for forever, perhaps.
Dan, could I make a comment? This is Opal.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Opal Keel. The pictures that Kathy showed you a few minutes ago are the ones that I took along the Schroeder property and then along the Brunton property. And the fence has been there a very long time, and it is intertwined with the trees and the brush that is growing there. So to put in a new fence, you would have to tear out that old fence, and you would be tearing out all of the buffer that is there and starting over basically with a new fence, but you wouldn't have any of the long time vegetation that is there that provides quite a good buffer for those properties.
Okay. And I'm assuming, I mean, it sounds like there's, no issue with the Brunton property, but with, again, the Schroeder property, I'm assuming that you would, after this case, that you would talk to them about,
Be more than happy to. I've wanted to at this point, but like I said,
right.
Talk to Gary, and I didn't know I could talk to Lauren, and I thought I'm just going to let it. I don't feel like I should talk to anybody at this time, which we haven't. So. But yes, very definitely, I would talk to them, and if there's some other thing, something else that we can do to perhaps satisfy their concerns, we're happy to consider that.
Thank you. Are there any other board members that would like to comment or questions? And I'm assuming there's no other comments on social media.
Steve, just a moment.
Sure.
I think we still have people in the audience who would now like to speak.
Okay.
Oh, wait, finish that.
Okay, again, my name is Rodney Klein, 6621 South 200 East. The two southernmost properties, the one on the east side, which would be the right side in this picture, is that the tree line from the house over? I guess this question is for Mr. Teeter.
I guess I would ask Joanne to comment on that. If you would unmute Joanne.
Yes, that is the tree line. The tree line is right here. That blue line.
Okay. How close to that tree line are they going to get? They're definitely not taking that tree line out?
No, that would remain.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe from that blue line, there's a setback of 100 feet.
That is correct. All along, everything along the eastern border, there's a setback of 100 feet.
Okay.
So they can't mine.
I live directly across the street from there. I just wanted to make sure, the only reason I'm here, I wanted to make sure that tree line is staying in, and you weren't going to get too close over there.
The tree line stays in, and we are at least 100 feet from that blue line that you see on the eastern side.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
You can see they can still take out the trees on the inside of the blue line, but they can't mine for 100 feet.
We have no desire to take the tree out. That's an additional buffer.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
One more person who would like to ask a question.
Okay.
Patrick Harper, I live at 2024 East 700 South. My question is, well, I got two. Sorry. First one, what's the green drawn or the green colored area that we're seeing right on the eastern side of the variance? I'm just curious as to what that is, since it's colored green. And the second thing is that are there any effects to the drainage area, since we're digging a large pit to get aggregate out? Is that been addressed or is that someplace else, just for my edification?
Again, we're using no water in this area, so drainage to me is not an issue. As to his first question, I guess I don't know. You know, maybe Joanne needs to respond to what is green, or what. I assume there's crop in there at this point, Joanne, or when that picture was taken. But this little green area here, the lighter green, I'll call it, is a wetland area that we're excluding. If that answers his question. Yes.
Dan, I'm going to take a stab here, but maybe Tim Balanceifer could answer. I think that is a bigger wetland that they are avoiding, which cannot be mitigated because it's too large. The little wetland that they may be able to mine over is, I think, on the south end. Maybe Tim can point that out specifically, but the large green area is a wetland and it is excluded from the area to be mined.
I agree with that. I don't know. The smaller area is north of that somewhere, I thought.
Sally, this is Tim. You're correct. The large wetland is been excluded. As you can see, that triangle shape is the perimeter of the pit. The wetland is just to the small, it's less than 1/10 of an acre. It's 0.08 acres that will be permitted, and we're just waiting on the response. It is just due east of the point of that triangle, and it's really hard to see because it's so small.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm assuming that this will go before Drainage Board?
Correct. We are going to be in front of Drainage Board for a couple of reasons. One, for a vacating of a legal drain tile, and then, of course, our erosion control.
And the person that was speaking before, you can contact the area plan or the county commissioners or the surveyor's office to find out when that Drainage Board meeting would be, if you're interested in the drainage.
What was that individual's name? I couldn't hear, Steve.
I wrote it down, but I'm not sure which page I wrote it down on. It was Patrick Harper, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We're getting head shakes, yes.
Okay.
Last call for comments. And Dan, I don't know if you had anything else to respond to from those questions.
I request your approval and thank you for letting us speak.
Any other comments from the board?
On social media, Steve.
You said there's nothing else on special media or
Correct.
social media? If not, we have 5 ballots, and do you want the special exception first? I'm assuming we can continue with the, filling them all out, but go ahead and do the special exception first, if that sounds okay with you, Zach.
That sounds perfect, and I'll give everybody heads up so we can do a voice call on the special exception, and then if that's a denial, we'll stop on the variances.
Okay, and remember not to close since we got multiple ballots, don't close your windows. Just pull up another one. You have ballots to fill out. And for those listening, this will probably take a little while. Just wanted to remind the board members to please submit the special exception one once you have that completed.
Real quick, everyone, we do have all 5 ballots in on the special exception, so I'm going to do a roll call on those and then we can move on to the variances. So approve or deny on the special exception. Steve Clevenger.
Approve.
Tom Andrew.
Approve.
Frank Donaldson.
Approve.
Jen Decker.
Approved.
Approved.
Ed Butts.
Approved.
And there are 5 votes in favor of granting the special exception. So now we can go ahead and move on to the variances. Thank you.
Thank you. The special exception has been approved. Somebody's not on mute and is producing a lot of noise. Just another reminder not to close your ballot windows.
Zach, this is Frank, if I'm part of the holdup, I'm having some technical problems here, so advise me.
Okay, and we're still waiting on a couple other ballots to roll in. Anything particularly that's staff could help with, maybe?
What are you having problems with, Frank? Is it?
I'm viewing on my phone, and my phone kind of heats up and kicks off, so I have to go revisit it. So I'm going to be slow, and I'm not sure if I'm essential on this. I mean, I can keep hanging away, but I've had to reopen my app on the phone 2 times. I think it overheats.
Just continue on, and we'll see what happens when everybody else gets theirs turned in.
Appreciate everyone's patience here. Just as an update, we are still waiting on a few. So we have all our responses in on the first two variances and still rolling in, but still waiting on a couple ballots on the last two. Frank, you're good on the first two. I got a couple of responses, probably because you were getting kicked off. Just need the last two variances. First two are good, though. Okay, guys, we are almost there. Frank, I've got all your ballots except for request number 5.
I will have that momentarily. Well, for the record, I got kicked out again right at the end of number 5. If you'd like to proceed, I will try and retrieve that and if this becomes vital. Am I making sense?
Yeah, and I think just for time's sake, because I will just take the drama out of it, there are enough votes, it's unanimous. So if you want to abstain, Frank, from variance number 5, just say you're going to abstain from that particular vote. I think we can go ahead and just move forward.
Well, let's do that. I will abstain. Just do that verbally. I'm
Yeah, just
abstaining
from that
from
particular one.
my vote on number 5.
All right. So in that case, we have all the ballots in. And just to save everyone some time, I'm going to just, because all the votes are consistent across the board, as I call the roll, I will just ask if your vote's consistent for all 4 variances 3 through 6. Okay. So Steve Clevenger, what is your vote for variances 3 through 6? And you're on mute, Steve, sorry.
Thanks. Forgot I muted. Approval for all 4.
All right, and Tom Andrew, what is your vote for 3 through 6?
Approval for all 4.
Ed Butts,
Approval for all 4.
Jen Decker,
Approval for all 4.
and Frank Donaldson, with the exception of the one you abstained from.
Approval for all except for the one I abstained from.
Okay,
Thank
so
you
the
very much.
votes are unanimous. The votes are 5 votes in favor, no votes against for variance 3, variance 4, and variance 6. And variance 5 is approved with a vote of 4-0 and 1 abstention.
Again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Unless any member has an objection, the chair will order the findings of each member casting a vote for the majority decision of the board to be the collective findings of the board. Or whoops, let me start over there. Unless any member has an objection, the chair will order the findings of each member casting a vote for the majority decision of the board to be the collective findings of the board in support of the decision of the board. Hearing none, it is so ordered. Sally, any administrative matters?
Oh, no, thank you.
And I would like to thank all the board members that are present. I'm assuming that we don't need to call Gary back. That he's fine with, that we don't need to email him and wait for him to join back online.
No, I will text him and tell him his services are no longer needed for the evening.
Oh, okay. And I would like to thank Zach and staff for all the hard work putting the virtual meetings together. And I will take the last motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for your patience.